Hello, alright guys, how's it going? I've got a bit of new hardware recently, so if someone in the comment section can just give a confirm that you can hear what I'm saying, if that's alright. I just want to make sure everything I've got is working properly and that I'm reaching you loud and clear. There's a bit of a delay between me and you, so I'll just wait for a few seconds. You can hear me? Guild F40, he can hear me. Awesome, that is fantastic. My man Dan Leesgang isn't in the chat today. He's big thanks to Dan. He sent me. I didn't have a good webcam. I was using my phone for the previous couple of webinars that I did. The quality wasn't great, and he actually went out of his way and sent me a webcam that he had spare all the way from Australia to the Republic of Ireland, which I've huge respect for. So big thanks to Dan for that. How is everyone today? It's nice to see a few users. The last few lessons I had about five to 10 people in it. I thought I'd share this one publicly and make it a publicly viewable. Volume could be up. Hang on just a second. That might just be move my microphone kind of thing. Let's see if there's any settings that I can add. Captures all the way up. Okay, I think I'm just gonna have to put the mic a bit closer to my mouth. It's a bit. How are we for sounds, guys? Cool, that's good. That's good. But yeah, how's everyone tonight? It's getting pretty late for me. I think a lot of you guys might be in the US or Australia or something. Yeah, the first welcome to Crypto College. This is a kind of a new idea of mine. As a new idea of mine. I've noticed that there's been a big influx for new people into the cryptocurrency scene over the past, well, since this summer really. It does come in waves, and it's hard to get into. It is hard to understand what's going on. Like a lot of people might have sort of a trading background with shares and stocks, etc. This is very different. I mean, there's no, there are no real experts in cryptocurrencies because it hasn't been around long enough. There are people like myself who have been involved for a few years that might have picked up a thing or two, but I don't believe there are any real experts in cryptocurrencies right now. It's far too young a field. I'll just put a bit of background information about myself so you know who you're listening to. My name's Will. I live in the Republic of Ireland. I've been very interested in cryptocurrencies for a long time. I discovered Bitcoin in 2011 when it had a very small market cap. I didn't buy in huge. I'm not a whale. I didn't stack up on tens of thousands of Bitcoins for 10 cents each, and I kick myself every single day for not doing that. Don't worry. But I've been watching the market since about 2011. I've dipped in and out. I've made a good bit out of trades, but like I say, I'm not a whale. I'm not a rich guy. I spent a few years pretty much trading part time to finance university. I was a student most of the time while I was learning about cryptos, and I was mostly using my profits to pay for tuition fees and things like that. In hindsight, that was a mistake, but hindsight is always 20/20. Yeah, I've been paying attention since about 2011, and I've I'm more interested in the newer emerging technologies surrounding blockchain rather than just focusing on the money side of things. I don't really believe blockchain is essentially primarily about currency. I think it's about controlling data. We'll get to that in a bit. Yeah, I consider myself a fairly regular guy. I'm a sound engineer by day. And I spend a bit of time dabbling in cryptocurrencies to the point where after about 6 years I find myself quite significantly experienced in studying them and looking at them compared to most other people I know who back in 2011 laughed at Bitcoin. They thought it was a joke. Who's laughing now? Right, we'll get on with the planned lesson. The first thing we're going to look at is what is a blockchain. This is going to be the majority of today's lesson. What is a blockchain? Bitcoin was the first blockchain application to come out in 2009, I think it was, wasn't it? Developed by Satoshi Nakamoto, you all know that. But what made this currency interesting was the blockchain technology that it was built on. a blockchain is a decentralized system for controlling data. All it really is, it's a public ledger of information that anybody can access, anyone can audit, and once it's written in, that it's kept that way, it's preserved through mining. So the key features of a blockchain is that it's decentralized, it's distributed, a peer verified ledger, it's immutable and has no central authority. Peer verified ledger means once an entry is made into the blockchain, everybody is able to view it and everybody agrees with that entry to the ledger before moving on to the next entry. Immutable just means it can't be edited. Once an entry is made into a blockchain and once it's been confirmed and agreed on by everybody in the system, that's it. There's no going back on that. That's the key part of the underlying technology here. It has no central authority. That's correct. There is no central bank of Bitcoin. There is no authority on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is controlled by its users, and it's processed by its miners. But we're all third party. We're all third party in this system. There's no trusted middleman in Bitcoin. Even your exchanges are acting as a third party. They're just buying and selling a thing on a market. They don't control the market, and they're not a central authority on a market. And the last point is a blockchain is a database. That's really fundamental in understanding where this technology is going. I think it's a means of storing data that in such a way that everybody can access it and that data is preserved. This is the revolutionary part of blockchain, I believe. Currently, it's mostly being employed as a means to keep financial accounts, either in the terms of smart contracts or simply as a currency. I can see this expanding massively in all sorts of fields that none of us really expect. This slide is a common one. You'll see this a lot. But basically, the difference between a centralized, decentralized, and a distributed system. Now, in the case of Bitcoin, your direct comparisons are banks, central banks, and these sorts of institutes which act as centralized authorities on our money. If you're in Europe, it's the European Central Bank. If you're in America, it's the Federal Reserve. These are the guys who control money. They keep a ledger, the same as our blockchain that we use, our public ledger. The central bank keep a ledger. It's private. No one can view it except them, and they have full control over what goes in and what happens on that ledger. And that's a huge amount of control. I mean, a handful of central banks essentially control the entire world's supply of money, which, different people have different opinions on that. I don't think it's very good. I'm an anti-capitalist myself. I don't believe rich banks should have control over my property. But this model is doesn't just apply to finance or to currency. If you think about almost every modern business today relies on a centralized structure. For example, we're using YouTube right now, where YouTube are they're the central body of a centralized structure. Like I'm talking to you now, broadcasting directly to a centralized YouTube server that I have to register with. That all of the data that I'm making and streaming right now is kept on Google, but YouTube's central server, their central ledger, and then it's shared with all of you guys. Whereas that's not ideal. I don't believe that's the ideal. I don't think that's the most efficient way of doing things. I think decentralized and eventually distributed means of broadcasting all kinds of data are far preferable to centralized ones. But this centralized, decentralized, and distributed. These models exist across business, not just for currency, not just for smart contracts and financial means. You can pick any one of the top 500 companies in the world, and I'd almost guarantee you that they make the vast majority of their business by maintaining their position as a trusted third party and as a gatekeeper for that market. Google, for example. they hoard data. They're a central authority on data. They make their money by maintaining their position as a central authority on data. This is all money is. That's a very important point I like to put across to people whenever I'm explaining blockchains. What we're talking about, we're not talking about banking and financial systems. We're talking about data management systems. A blockchain is a way to store data, the same as a centralized private databases. A blockchain can just as well perform the same tasks as a centralized database without being a centralized database. We'll come back to these photos a bit with some more examples, but I think the key point to take away from here is blockchain technology has the potential to make the shift from centralized towards distributed, the distributed model of business entirely. Whenever a business's main interest is acting as a gateway to data, blockchain has the potential to shift that from being a centralized organization to a distributed organization, which is like hugely more efficient. So, elements of the chain. What exactly is a blockchain? What am I talking about? Well, a blockchain is kind of made up of a number of different elements that work together as a functioning system. First of all, we've got mining. Mining is the act of securing and verifying the data that is kept in the chain. When I say the chain, I mean the ledger, which is the second point I have there. The ledger is a record of data kept and shared amongst the whole network, which is kept secure by the miners. So if you can think of when you get your bank statement at the end of the month, imagine you've been out on the spend every day for the month, and when you come back, come back to the house after a month out, and you get your bill, your credit card bill or your bank statement, and say you might have 10 pages of transactions, and they're all in sequential order. This is what the ledger is. A ledger is a record of accounts. In the case of Bitcoin, it's a record of spends and receives, and general activity on your account. But yeah, the ledger acts as pretty much a bank statement. It's a record of everything that's going on the entire network. It's secured and verified by the miners. Like say, every transaction that is to be entered on the ledger is verified by all of the miners at the same time, and their job is to make sure that the information on this ledger stays how it was when it was entered, so that it never changes, so it can always be referenced at a later point, and it will always be correct. Wallets. Wallets are just user accounts. A wallet is basically when you create an account with a bank. That's your wallet. You've got your private key and a public key, and that's all that a wallet contains. They're up there. They're recorded on the ledger. Again, the same as the bank statement analogy for the ledger. If you have an account with that bank, they have a copy of your bank statement as well as the one that they post out to you. The only difference is in the case of a bank, they're a centrally organized ledger rather than a public open one that we can all inspect. And the coins are units of value that are kept record of on the ledger. So every time a new block is opened by the miners, there's a certain number of coins that are given to the miner that finds that block. So the total number of coins increases per block, and the coins act purely as an incentive for people to mine and secure the network. If there was no reward for mining, nobody would do it. There'd be no point, and we'd have no blockchains. We wouldn't have Bitcoin, because no one is going to spend all their money on mining hardware and equipment unless they're going to get some payment out of it in some form. This is what the coins do. They incentivize mining. They incentivize people to secure and use the network. Now, a block. What is a block? Again, I said we'll stick with Bitcoin as the case study here. In Bitcoin, a block is roughly 10 minutes. It acts in the analogy that we gave. If the ledger is your bank statement, a block might be a page on that bank statement. They're over time and sequential, so there'll be block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, block 5, and their sequence is always kept in the same order. This is done through cryptography, we'll get to later. And they represent periods of time on the ledger. Like for Bitcoin, it's 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, we begin a new block. And when we begin the new block, all of the data in all of the previous blocks is acknowledged, and then the start of the new block begins with all of the balances recorded in the previous blocks become the start of the new block. The same way as when you get next month's bank account, it remembers how much you had left the previous month. You don't just start again from 0. But yeah, that's fair. We'll move along a little bit there, because I think... Right, this is a block. This is what a block looks like. This is the Bitcoin blockchain. It's the first block on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's block number 1, or what's known as the Genesis block. This is what it looks like when it's converted to hex. I think this is converted to hex. Yeah. But it's just data. Like I was saying, a block is a page of data that's kept on a blockchain, which is a public ledger, which is secured by the miners, and it's accessible to anyone. You can look at this block right now if you go to blockchain.info and just find block number 1. And indeed, you can find any block that has been generated since 2009, because they're all public. Anyone can look at every transaction that has ever happened on the blockchain. Some interesting point about this particular block is you see on the right hand side, you've got 3rd of January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. Second bailout for banks. This was a message sent embedded in the first block by Satoshi. I think it makes it very clear what his aims and goals are with launching Bitcoin. But this is a very, very key point. As I've mentioned before, blockchain at the moment is considered a currency-based platform. We can see here that that any information can be stored on a block. This is some plain text that has been embedded in the block, because obviously Satoshi wanted to send out a message or to send out some kind of a statement. But the fact that a block can contain any data entered onto it, it doesn't have to be accounts, it doesn't have to be a transaction or a monetary or financial exchange. Any data can be kept on a block and shared and distributed across the entire world. This is a very, very key point to understanding future growth in blockchains. So, how a transaction is sent, what goes on, what actually happens if I'm sending somebody a Bitcoin, what goes on the back end. Okay, to start off with, say we're on the current block now, and the previous block just got closed off. Like say 30 seconds ago, the last block got closed off, and we've just opened a new one in our time period. So in the previous block, Anne has 2 Bitcoins and Bob has none. Bob's new to Bitcoin and he wants to learn all about what's going on, so Anne is teaching him. At the end of the previous block, the 30 seconds before now, all of the miners across the whole network have agreed that these balances are equal, that Anne has 2 Bitcoins, because they can see every transaction Anne has ever made with her wallet, and the end result is that she has plus 2 Bitcoins in her account, in her wallet. Sorry. Bob has just opened a brand new wallet. All of the miners realise this, and they all agree that he has no Bitcoins. Bob's never been sent a Bitcoin ever. Everybody agrees with that. So what happens? Anne opens up her wallet, and she takes Bob sends Anne his public key, which is his wallet address, and Anne uses her wallet to transmit the transaction minus 1 Bitcoin from me plus 1 Bitcoin to Bob. And now she doesn't send this to Bob. this transaction doesn't get sent to Bob, it gets sent to the entire network. Every transaction that anybody makes on the Bitcoin network is simultaneously sent to everyone on the entire network during the the next 10 minutes of mining. So after she's transmitted this transaction that she wishes to transfer 1 Bitcoin to Bob, all of the miners start processing this and every other transaction that's going on at the same time. And they take 10 minutes to all agree that, yep, Anne definitely has these 2 Bitcoins. She's not double spending. She's not spending money she hasn't got. So this transaction is valid. And after 10 minutes and after a phenomenal amount of computing power, to confirm without any doubt that this is a valid transaction, the block is closed. After 10 minutes or so, a miner will solve the block, and that block will be closed. And the transaction that Anne makes, sending 1 Bitcoin to Bob, is recorded in that block, essentially forever. It can't be edited. Well, outside of a 51% attack, which is very, very unlikely. We'll talk about that another time. So at the end of the current block, all are agreed. It's confirmed. The block is closed. We'll move on to the next block. And at the opening of the next block, all of the miners have looked back on the previous block, which is the one in the middle in the picture at this point, and they all agree, yep, Anne should have 1 Bitcoin, Bob should have 1 Bitcoin. And they proceed with opening the next block and wait for more transactions to come and be processed. And from then on, Anne has her new balance and Bob has her new balance. Now, how this differs from say making a payment to somebody online using a credit card or PayPal or something like that is the transaction here is broadcast to the entire network simultaneously. Every single miner, every single wallet can look at this transaction from within a couple of seconds of Anne clicking send. This is not the case with PayPal. PayPal, you are sending your money through a trusted third party to who you want to send the money to. The trusted third party always makes a profit from this because that's why they exist. And it's entirely up to the third party. Nobody else can audit this. It's not the whereas is Bitcoins, we've got miners all over the world verifying every single transaction. PayPal have their own internal system, their own private internal system for verifying every transaction, which means I can't trust it. I don't know what's going on behind PayPal's back end, but I can look at every single Bitcoin transaction and know exactly what's going on here. So, gonna briefly stop there. Does anybody have any questions so far? I know we've kind of torn through quite a lot quite quickly. Is there anything anybody wants me to just go over and just to clarify again? Hang on, let me open it. I've only got one screen, unfortunately, so I'll have to... Could I just re-go over how a miner finds the block? Yes, I can. Basically, every block, once it's opened, has a problem in it, a mathematical problem in it. And the problem scales in difficulty depending on how many miners are on the network. So if you've got not many miners on your network at all, you're going to have a pretty easy problem because they're expected to solve it within the 10 minutes. It's a maths problem. It's a complicated maths problem, and the more miners are on that network, the more difficult that problem becomes. The problem has an answer, and what happens is all the miners will rapidly hash different potential answers by using brute force until one of them eventually guesses the correct answer to that problem. And when one of them correctly guesses the answer to that problem, that signals the end of that block. And what actually happens once the end of a block is signaled, that every transaction in the block is then cryptographically hashed, so it can't be read in plain text, and then the sum of all of those transactions are also hashed to produce a very unique fingerprint, and the fingerprint is attached to the end of the last block, and it becomes the beginning of the next block. So this maintains the order, so that block 101 will only ever precede block 102 because there's a fingerprint between the two of them that nothing else can match. This is how we keep the blockchain linear, and how we preserve its integrity to make sure that no blocks are ever switched out or ever altered. I think that answers your question. Does it, Guild F40? You asked how miners mine blocks. It's in the case of Bitcoin, there's lots of different ways of mining. The most common and most talked about is the Bitcoin method, which is called proof of work, which is like I said, there's a mathematical problem embedded in every single block, and the miners essentially guess through sheer brute force what is the answer to this problem. Eventually, one of them will, by luck, get the correct answer. Okay, cool, man. That's good. That's good. Yeah, no, it's hard. It's not hard. It's just a lot of new technology. It's a lot of new terms to take on all at once, if you know what I mean. And you'll get there, man. You'll get there. I'll upload. Yeah, hashing is what they're doing. Hashing is another word for, like, say if you wanted to, if you wanted to get into somebody's email account, and you'll just randomly type password after password after password. You can try hundreds of thousands of them. Eventually, you'll get the right password and get in. That's hashing. The miners just do this, but instead of trying to guess a password, they're trying to guess the correct answer to a mathematical problem that's generated by the network. Okay, has anyone else any questions that answered so far? Because I know this I've kind of front loaded the technical stuff on this lecture, but there's method to my madness. Don't worry, lads. Don't worry, guys. Okay, so where are my next slides? The mining process. You anticipated me there with a question. So each block contains a problem to be solved. The difficulty depends on the computing power on the network. This is interesting for me as well. I'm very interested in supercomputers and this sorts of thing. The Bitcoin network currently runs at about 5 exahashes per second. That's 5 with 16 zeros after it. Attempts per second for every single second, every second at trying to solve the problem. This is a phenomenal amount of computing power. There is nothing on Earth. There's no network on Earth with that much connected parallel computing power by a long shot, by orders of magnitude. It's easy to think of the Bitcoin network as the world's biggest supercomputer because it kind of is, but it only serves one purpose. Unfortunately, it acts as a form of currency right now, only, and can't yet be used as a supercomputer. And yeah, the miner who solves each block's problem is rewarded with coins. These coins are just allocated to his wallet on the blockchain. I think at the moment Bitcoin is 12.5 coins per. Whenever if a miner finds a block, there's 12.5 coins released. It used to be 50. It started at 50, then went 25, and halves every now and then. Most miners use a pool which share rewards. This is true. Only a complete maniac would try solo mining these days because it's just impossible. You will wait hundreds of years solo mining and you almost definitely won't find a Bitcoin. So how pools work is everybody who has a miner connects to the pool, and the pool together they all hash the problem, that sharing their computer power, and whenever one say one miner in the pool finds a block that's then shared proportionally with everybody else. It's the only way really anyone can effectively mine cryptocurrencies, unless they get in on like the first couple of days of a new coin that's been secretly launched, because there are just so many people mining these days. And the mining process secures the network. This is a really important point. because there's an incentive for people to put miners on the network, and the more miners that are on the network, the more hashing power that we have. This increases the security of the overall network. It means that there's more miners verifying every transaction, and there's more miners securing the integrity of the blockchain so that it's never altered. And it also acts as a clock. This is a point that's very often overlooked. Blocks are clocks. Like I said, they're released every 10 minutes, and they can be used as a unit of time to go back through a blockchain to analyze it, or to set reminders in the future. Say when a coin is forking or something like that, devs won't say the date they're going to do it. They're going to say, we're going to do this on block 120,000 or something like that. So it acts as a clock, so we can share time. We can share time stamps, which is obviously very important if you're keeping any kind of databases and records. Your wallet? What is your wallet? A Bitcoin wallet contains a public key and a private key. It represents the user's account on the shared public ledger, and that's it. That's all a wallet is. When you download a wallet, what you're downloading is a simple GUI, a graphical user interface, which just means stuff you can look at and click. Basically, a window you can open and click things in. It's a public key and a private key. Your public key is what is your wallet address. It's what you give to people to pay you, or it's what you transfer money to. It's public. It's safe. It's safe to put in public. The only thing anyone can do with a public key is give you money. So, no real reason to keep it secret. And your private key. Your private key is the exact opposite. It is used to spend money. Is to do anything. But if whoever controls the private key of a wallet controls the wallet, basically. It's not a good idea to ever share your private keys for obvious reasons. If you do, expect to not have any bitcoins pretty soon, because it's very easy. With a private key, it's not like you don't even need to withdraw bitcoins from somebody's wallet. You own it. It's yours. But yeah, it represents a user's account on the ledger. Like I said, it's essentially your account with the bank. And that's it. Wallets are very simple. Some of them keep a local copy of the blockchain. Most don't anymore, because a lot of blockchains are just far too big to keep on a personal computer. Especially if you've got an SSD or something like that. I'm not interested in having 100 megabytes of Ethereum blockchain sitting on my computer. So this is a wallet. This is not my wallet. I wish it was. I'd love to have 64 bitcoins. I don't have anything near that. So yeah, this wallet is all this contains is a private key and a public key, and it uses those private keys and public keys to look at the blockchain. All of the data that you see here is pulled directly from the blockchain. The balance is pulled directly from the blockchain, because all the miners have agreed that this is how much balance should be in this wallet. The number of transactions is retrieved by scanning the blockchain for amount of transactions associated with this public and private key. And you can even look at individual transactions going all the way back to the Genesis block through most good wallets. I assume most people are familiar with a basic wallet, so I won't spend too much time going through it. But just to basically just hammer the point across that all your wallet is your public and private key. You don't need a GUI. You don't need to download a wallet. If you have your public key and your private key, you control your funds. You can remember that people commit these to memory. I know a few people who have what they call brain wallets, which they've just committed to memory their private keys, so they can just jump on any computer, go online, import their wallet directly from the blockchain. When you send a Bitcoin to your own wallet stored on your PC, you haven't got anything stored on your PC. Your Bitcoin is on the blockchain. It's always on the blockchain. The wallet is just the means to access and look at and spend that Bitcoin. So, what is the big deal? I'll stop again briefly because we're kind of moving away from the technical side of things at the moment. here, just to sort of talk about what I think the futures in blockchains are. Again, anyone got any questions? If there's anything you guys are unclear about how the blockchain or the wallet works, like do ask, because I want to make sure I'm putting this across as clearly as I possibly can, because I know it's a bit difficult to start off with, can be quite technical. So anything anybody doesn't fully understand so far? Don't be shy, guys. Honestly, like I've plenty of time and plenty of patience for helping you. Cool, man. That's good. I'm glad I'm able to do my job. It's a bit daunting to explaining this to some people, because some people are just kind of bottle up when you talk about technical things with them. But I don't believe blockchain is overly technical. It's just different to how we're used to doing things, and it's just a matter of kind of breaking that wall down, really. So move on briefly. What is the big deal? Right, for me, like I said earlier, I'm actually an anti-capitalist. I don't really believe in amassing private property. I don't think capitalism is a very good thing, and I think it's had its time, and it's time to sort of move on to better systems. But I don't judge other people. There are lots of very nice capitalists. I'm happy to be friends with everybody, and I'm happy to argue with everybody. But it's my belief that the really big innovations from blockchain technology will have nothing to do with money. Money is data. Whenever you spend money, whenever you earn money, if you pick up a $20 or €20 note, go to the shop, buy your groceries, all you're doing is exchanging packets of information. Like a $20 note is nothing more but than a packet of information flying around a network, that's being passed around a network. Banks are essentially nodes. End users, everyone is all part of a network where information flows to make things happen. That this is all money is. I mean, this is becomes more and more evident every day, where digitalized, not crypto, but digitalized money has massively been over replacing cash money. I mean, cash money is a minority of the amount of money that's spent now. So the point that money is just data flying around from node to node is a lot easier to understand than it used to be back when everything was checkbooks and notes and coins. But I think it's really key to understand that it's not just money we're talking about here. The effects that blockchain has had on money in the past 8-9 years can be applied to everywhere where data is, every business that is based on data, on maintaining and keeping data. All data can be managed on a blockchain, not just accounts. It doesn't have to be a record account of accounts and personal spending. Anywhere where data is commercialized can be managed on a blockchain, and is almost certainly more efficient on a blockchain. Blockchains remove third parties. They remove the need for third parties. Like we go back to this picture here. The third party system is the one on the left for which is labeled centralized. Other systems are decentralized and distributed. Like pretty much every business, pretty much every business on Earth is centralized. Or every industry is centralized, where you have the big players in that industry as the trusted third parties. We can look at insurance, say for the insurance business, advertising, the likes of iTunes or Google. Pretty much all of these companies make all of their money through being a trusted third party that looks after data, and people go to that third party to access the data that they look after. In the case of insurers, their data is money collected from people paying premiums. In the case of Google, it's information. In the case of YouTube or iTunes, their data is music or videos or something like that, and they are the third party keepers and managers of that data. Everybody else who wants it has to move through them, has to operate through the third party, and they always make a profit. The entire point of being a trusted third party in an industry is to make a profit. This is what all businesses do. It's the nature of commerce. No one's doing it unless they're trying to make some money. Whereas I believe that these days most of the giants of industry make the vast majority of their money just because they happen to be a trusted third party, and their entire empires are built around them maintaining their position as being trusted third parties and being needed. Through blockchains, they're not needed anymore. Like you've got the likes of Library, which aims to essentially replace YouTube. It does most, if not all, of the things that YouTube does do, but it's based on a blockchain and isn't a company. There is no central library business to make profits out of everybody using their service. And this is immediately more efficient before anything is even conducted on the service. So we remove the third parties. We remove centralized trusted third parties from a lot of potential systems. The blockchain is secured through cryptography, so it's safe. This is far more than could be said from most trusted third parties. I don't think a day goes by without looking at my news feed and finding some new company got hacked or has had their website breached or has lost information or had data breached from them. If all of this data, if any sensitive data is kept securely encrypted on a publicly accessed blockchain, it means that at the same time everybody can access what they should be accessing. Whereas if somebody doesn't have the keys, the encryption keys for what's on a blockchain, they can't access it. It will take hundreds of years of raw computing power and millions of dollars to break top end encryption these days. So if you want documents, if you want data kept safe, a blockchain is the best place to put it. In my opinion, centralized companies have proven time and time again that they're not capable of keeping large data and maintaining large data in such a way that it's safe and verifiable. We see failures every day here. Blockchains are visible to everyone. Really important point. Anything that has to or should be audited is immediately easier to do on a blockchain than manually. Plenty of examples you could give. Really, I keep coming back to banks, but with the Bitcoin network and with other cryptocurrencies, we can see the state of the entire network at any one time. We know that there is nobody, that there's nobody scamming the network or spending money that they shouldn't have, or lying or being dishonest about what funds they have and that sort of thing. Whereas that is the case these days. I mean, like, nobody knows how much money banks have. Nobody knows how much gold reserves are in any of the gold reserves in the world, because this information is largely secret and inauditable, and people who do audit it internally, and they don't share their results. So the rest of us just kind of guessing how much gold is still left in Fort Knox and that sorts of thing. Whereas if things that are managed and kept on a blockchain, we don't need to audit anything ever. We can look, we can see. I can see who the big owners of Bitcoin are. If the biggest exchange just starts dumping all of its coins, we can see on the blockchain as it happens. Nothing can be hidden. And in my opinion, that kind of technology is really scary for the powers that be. People who make their money through privacy, and because they're trusted third parties and they have the privacy to be able to get up to all sorts really with their networks and accounts. They will see some big changes in the near future once blockchain fully starts getting rolled out and understood by people. And yeah, they cannot be altered. The fact that a database cannot be altered after something's been added to it, like a transaction can't be deleted, that's a big deal. There's nothing. There's no real systems outside of blockchain systems where that's the case. Like I keep saying, like we rely on trusted third parties to secure their own databases, I don't. I straight up, I don't. You know, like there's far too many examples in the last few years of companies failing to secure their databases and failing to, you know, to properly secure their accounts that they have, either from attack or from corruption within. I mean, these things do happen. Like even with the best of intentions and the most legitimate companies, things like insider fraud and insider trading, they do happen. Once we have a publicly visible ledger for all of these transactions that is immutable, that can't be altered without everybody else seeing and knowing that it's being altered, I think you're going to see an end to a lot of corruption. It's going to, you know, in a blockchain society, like say for example, if MPs or members of parliament or senators or politicians, if their expenses, for example, were managed on a blockchain, you'd very, very quickly see a change in pattern of how these are carried out. I'll tell you that. And the last point I have is it's a new way of securing all databases. I've hit this point a few times now. I really hope it hits home. Anywhere in commerce where databases have value, they are more efficiently employed on a blockchain. I'm sure of this. There may be some examples where that's not the case, but the vast majority, I'm positive, of examples that in commerce and business today, if a company's making money from supposedly securing a database, if this was on a blockchain, that company A wouldn't need to exist to perform the service, and B, be more efficient for everybody else using that system. So, what are the applications? We're just going to go through a few more recent applications of blockchain technology that you may or may not be aware of. I hope you are. When I first got into blockchains, I understood that once the financial side of things start to kick into this technology, we're going to see some really, really big changes in how we do things. I still believe that, and I'm very excited to see that what I predicted back then is actually starting to happen now. What are the applications? Number one, the obvious one, money. A shared ledger, a shared public ledger that everybody can input and everybody can take part in, that is immutable after transactions are made, is obviously going to be used as a way to store wealth, and a way to transfer money between people. Bitcoin is obviously the killer app for this. Bitcoin was the first blockchain technology to come out, which I personally think is a bit unfortunate, because since then everybody just assumes blockchain is money. They associate blockchain technology with a way of accounting money, even technical people, and I don't think that's the way. I don't think that's how it's going to go in the next 10, 20 years or so. But obviously, it's going to, for the foreseeable future, blockchain will be primarily used to transfer wealth. But I can see a lot of other applications as well. Data storage. You have the likes of Storagecoin, Sirecoin. I think AntShares is doing this as well. There's a few others. Yeah, like when we looked at the Bitcoin Genesis block, all this means is instead of a load of accounts being sent, there are as well as a load of account data being sent to the public ledger. You can store stuff, you know. You can actually store data in a blockchain, whether it's PDF files or pictures or something like that. I mean, this code on the right with Satoshi's little message he left us, that can be anything, you know, anything that can be saved in ASCII, anything that can be saved in binary can be stored on the blockchain. And there's a few companies that are starting to do this already, which I'm delighted to see. You've Storage, Sirecoin, I think AntShares, I'm not entirely sure. Well, this is going to be a big deal, you know, like the likes of Dropbox and lots of other file transfer systems will be jumping on this at some stage, as well as that. You've got, because blockchains are cryptographically secured, we're going to see all sorts of documents, important documents that need to be kept stored on a blockchain. Like, for example, a notary or solicitors or banks that deal in mortgages, things like that. People who enter into contracts that are expected to last a long time, like a few decades at least. there are documents that need to be preserved for a few decades. If I was to take a mortgage out over 30 or 40 years, there are documents that I'd have to, that would need to be preserved for the throughout that 30 to 40 years. And solicitors and data storage companies make a lot of money from doing that. Like it's a big business to keeping data secure and accessible to people who need data being kept secure and accessible is a big industry. And the likes of Storage and Sire stepping into that there's huge potential there. There really is. It's not the kind of stuff that regular people use every day, but to a lot of big companies that need records accurately kept for long periods of time, there's lots of value there. Computational power. Golem and iExec are both examples of this. We spoke about the hashing, what the miners do to verify the network. This is a lot of computing power, and there's quite a few projects that are aiming to use that computing power for purposes other than just securing the network. Golem aims to be essentially a supercomputer like Amazon's EC2 that people can hire out and use for certain amounts of time to perform specific computational tasks that require a lot of computational power. This is going to be really big in science, in laboratory science for biotechnology, genetics, physics as well. Are going to use this a lot. I've actually got a background in biotechnological sciences myself, and I used to work in a place that did genomics and proteomics, which is basically keeping a record of different proteins and genes that are expressed in the body and expressed in all sorts of organisms, and that is essentially maintaining a gigantic database of data and keeping it secure and keeping it constantly updated. It's the kind of thing that a blockchain would be really, really useful for, and being able to rent huge amounts of computational power for occasionally would be very, very useful to an awful lot of people working in labs as researchers. So yeah, computational power managed on a blockchain, it's something that's happening, and I'm delighted it is happening. I can't wait to see the next few years to see what actually comes out of the technology, because it works, it's proven, and I just can't wait to see what happens there. Financial services, a bit different from currency, similar but a bit different. Financial services generally is dealing with smart contracts between people. You've got the likes of Expanse that offer a bond system, and a smart contract system, and We Trust, which aims to essentially be kind of a credit union, like a distributed credit union, kept on a blockchain with its own with its own currency. When I say credit union, you might not have them where you are. It's kind of like a building society, shared wealth, where people will share their wealth, pool their wealth, track it on a blockchain, and decide amongst themselves how that wealth is spent. In the case of insurance, it's kind of emergency savings that if somebody in this group needs a share of it, then they're allocated it by the rest of the group. But many in fact all financial services entirely rely on being a trusted third party in a system, and almost all of them can be completely replaced by a blockchain, and simply entering into agreements with people who you trust, who have good who you trust to be third parties. Marketplaces, this is a cool one. I remember picking up lots and lots of BitShares very early on, because they were the first coin I was aware of that was trying to make an internal marketplace. This is cool. If you download Waves, if you download the Waves platform, you can look at all sorts of markets inside it, and you can use the Waves wallet to buy US dollars or euros or bitcoins or litecoins or lots of other tokens on the Wave platform. And I think that's pretty cool. Whereas marketplaces always used to be, again, trusted third parties that you had to go to that provided a service that earned a profit out of you using that service. This is decentralized now. I mean, if I download the Waves wallet, I have an exchange on my computer. You know, I don't need to register with Bittrex. I don't need to register with Poloniex. I have an exchange in my wallet that I can use immediately for free, that I don't have to submit an ID to. You know, this is a big deal. Like, one of the biggest problems with growth in cryptocurrencies is the fiat gateway, which is actually getting fiat money into cryptocurrencies. Which, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you're new, you've recently bought your first bitcoins. It's a pain. It's a pain in the ass. It really is. Whereas a lot of new coins see this problem, they see this inefficiency, and are creating their own internal marketplaces on their blockchains. Which, again, their database is a marketplace, is nothing more than a collection of databases. A lot of data flying around nodes. Same as, you know, I keep drawing back to the original graph with the centralized and decentralized. Literally, almost every industry in existence today is centralized, and almost every one of them has a potential to move over to being decentralized on a blockchain. Hosting applications, Ethereum and Expanse. It's entirely possible to have your blockchain be Turing complete, which means executable code can be embedded in it and used and deployed. Also, DApps, people call applications that run on blockchains. Ethereum has gained a lot of attention for its DApps in the last few months. This is huge, and I honestly don't care that much to speculate about what can be achieved through applications based on a blockchain, because the possibilities are just endless. Like, anywhere where you see data being the product of a business or of a system, it's possible to make an application to cut out a huge chunk of those profits. Science, yeah, like I said, I've got a science background myself. There's massive potential in terms of particularly proteomics and particularly genomics and gene mapping. These tasks and physics, running simulations for physics and this sorts of things requires immense computing power, and having all of these, having these blockchains and miners mining them, and having all of this raw computing power there to be rented and to be used when and where it's needed during scientific research is a big deal. A few years ago, we saw the advent of folding coin, which basically is a Bitcoin clone that, instead of mining a difficult problem, the miners also try to work out shapes of proteins. Like how I'm not going to give you a lesson in biosciences, that's not why you're here, but basically the vast majority of biological research now is to try and find a protein that is of an exact shape to do a specific thing, and the difficulty is making that exact shape, or making the sets of amino acids that will fold up into that shape. And what folding coin does is it just blasts loads and loads and loads of possible solutions, the same way as the Bitcoin miners try to solve the maths problem. This is a shape problem that loads and loads of iterations will be thrown at it until eventually one works in, one shape that is made that works in the problem trying to be solved. That's what folding coin does. It's a really good project. I should mine it more. I used to mine it a while ago. I stopped. I should more, because it's real science. Like, it's this is like new drug discovery is absolutely driven by proteomics. Pretty much every new drug that is that comes out in the last 5, 10, 15 years or so is as a result of massively using huge amounts of parallel computing power to try and solve a very specific problem. There's huge growth in science. There is a potential for huge growth in even basic science for adoption of blockchains. Genetics is another one, like about, 10, 15 years ago, something like that, where they completed the Human Genome Project. I'm telling you guys, like, this was like hundreds of universities all over the world all working on the same project that was essentially a line of code. you know, a very, very, very long line of code. This would have been so much cheaper and so much quicker had the institutions had blockchain technology at the time, coordinating hundreds of institutes to work on the same project at the same time. It just screams blockchain application to me, and I really hope it happens. I'd love to see a gene coin pop up at some stage that has the sole purpose of securing and constantly verifying genomes of all sorts of organisms on the planet. That's enough about science. I could talk about this all day, but that's not why you're here. Peer-to-peer networking is another fantastic application. It was the first I expected to see, actually. Once I read Bitcoin and understood how blockchain works, the first application I expected to see was something like the Pirate Bay, moving over to a blockchain. Because at the time, the Pirate Bay kept getting shut down. They kept having their offices shut down and their websites taken offline, but they'd just pop up mirrors, like you know yourself. There's no ends to the Pirate Bay mirrors. I genuinely thought they'd adopt a blockchain. I thought they'd start archiving everything in blocks on a blockchain, make a pirate coin or something like that, and have people mine it and keep it secure. They didn't do that, and I'm surprised they didn't. But since then, we've had the likes of Steam, Library, and Golos step in and use the blockchain for effectively social networking and peer-to-peer networking. Steam is a blogging platform. It's fantastic. You should all check it out. I write on it. I'm Junglist. Steam is it's a blogging platform that has seen a massive upsurge in use. It's got some great writers on it, and it has its own economic system built into it, which I think is very cool. Library is very similar to BitTorrent, to how BitTorrent works, except it's managed on a blockchain, and has its own internal currency system. You should if you haven't looked at Library, you should totally check it out, guys. Honestly, like, it's a working product. It's very early on in its development cycle, and it has huge potential, like absolutely massive potential, and it works. The reason I bought into it a few months ago is because I tried the beta and it works. I didn't expect it to. I expected to spend half an hour or an hour messing around with it and maybe getting a few clips of video, but nope, every video I've watched on Steam has worked immediately. I'm delighted with it. And Golos, which is basically Russian version of Steam, and much more. There are so many more applications that I haven't even thought of yet, and that nobody's even thought of yet. Like I keep saying, if it's data and if it's profitable, a blockchain can do it more efficiently, and that's an almost universal argument in my opinion. So we'll go back very briefly to touch on the difference between traditional business and blockchain business. On the left, we've got this is the same graph as the decentralized centralized graph, but a bit different. On the left, we have every existing business currently. YouTube again is the example. The clearinghouse is the authority. It's the central authority that everyone is supposed to trust to keep their own accounts. And you can trust central authorities if you want. I'm not a huge fan of that. But it's who you do direct business with. Like, you guys now, you're not listening to me talk, you're listening to YouTube broadcast me talk. Big difference, because YouTube get a cut of that pie, and YouTube get a huge amount of control over that, which they don't need. And on the right, we have a blockchain-based transaction approach. So instead of in this case, imagine I'm party A. I'm not transmitting directly to YouTube, and you guys are not listening directly to YouTube. In this approach, I'm talking to you all directly across a network, and it completely cuts out the need for YouTube. It completely cuts out the need for them to even exist. And this model can be applied to pretty much every business that manages data as its primary income, which is most businesses in most industries. Quick recap how blockchain works. We'll go back over this because we skipped over it very quickly early on, and this is what I want you to understand. By the time, if you can understand how a transaction works at the end of this lecture, I'm happy. A wants to send money to B. A opens up his wallet, puts in the transaction, clicks send. The transaction is represented online as a block, which is a 10-minute interval in the case of Bitcoin. and that block is broadcast to everyone on the network. Everybody who's tuned in to Bitcoin sees this transaction. Everyone takes 10 minutes to agree about it. Here, step 4: those in the network approve it's valid or disapprove it if it's not valid. Once the block is approved, it's cryptographically hashed, and it's given a fingerprint called a Merkle root, and that fingerprint immediately attaches it to the next block that gets created. That creates a chain, so block 8, block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, block 5 are always going to be in that order. They're never going to be shuffled around, because each one is signed to the next one with a unique digital fingerprint. Once this is all confirmed by the whole network, and once that block is added to the current blockchain, then money moves from A to B, and A is minus whatever, and B is plus whatever is sent. Cool. Nearly at the last title, guys. We've got like maybe 10-15 minutes or so, just where I'm just going to quickly breeze through some basic security stuff, because a lot of people due to cryptocurrencies are going to be very new to keeping large amounts of money on the internet, first of all. And to do that, you must do that safely. It's very important that you know a few things about keeping yourself safe online. Again, I'll stop very quickly before I go on to this to take any questions. I really regret not setting up my second screen. It's a bit of a pain having to keep jumping back. Hey Peter, how's it going? Oh, he's gone. He's gone. Yeah, I'm recording this one. I will upload this later so other people can watch it. All right. Anyone, any questions that they want to clear up? Because I'm kind of done for now the technical side of the side of things for this lesson. So if there's anything you're not completely to grips with, do ask. Like there are no stupid questions here. There are no silly questions. If you're not clear about something, it means I've not explained it properly, and I'll try my best to make sure that you do understand this, because the important part of these lessons is that you do take away accurate information. Hey Bashiok, I love you too, mate. How are you? How's your day? What is a node? Okay, nodes aren't a thing on the Bitcoin network, and they're kind of unique to networks that have different mechanisms for securing the chain. We've talked about how Bitcoin secures the blockchain, which is proof of work, which is the adding a difficult maths problem in each block. A lot of networks have different methods of securing the chains. Like, for example, well, I can't even think of a POS coin right now. PPS, which is PPS coin uses proof of stake, which a node is basically a wallet that holds a large amount of that currency, and that must be attached to a full copy of the blockchain. A node's job is to secure the blockchain not by mining, but by holding a lot of that currency in a wallet with a copy of the full chain. It's basically a way to incentivize people to hold that coin, while at the same time securing the chain. Like, say for example, if I had $100,000 worth of PPC, and I kept it all in one wallet to secure the chain, I have a huge interest in that chain remaining how it was. Like, if I have a large investment in a currency and I keep all of this together in one wallet, I'm not going to mess around with that chain, because if I mess around with that chain, all of my money becomes worthless. So it uses proof of stake rather than proof of work. That might not be so clear for you, because like a central bank for a coin, not really. No, a central bank issues the coin, whereas nodes don't issue the coin. They verify they do the same job as miners. They verify transactions, and they secure the integrity of the chain, but they just do it in a different way. They do it by declaring to the world that I have a huge stake in this network, and then are expected to maintain the integrity of the blockchain. It is possible for nodes to mess around with the blockchains they're supposed to be securing, but it makes no sense to do this. Like, seeing as you have to hold a large amount of that currency, why would you ever attack a currency that you hold a large amount of? It makes no sense. Proof of stake is a very, very good innovation for cryptocurrencies, because it uses a hell of a lot less electricity to maintain the network. That's kind of as far as I want to go with nodes, because I was going to touch on proof of stake in one of the next lessons. I don't know, does that make a bit of sense to you, Guild? Yeah, that makes sense. Nodes would be more. Hang on, when we look back at the hang on, I've got to get me picture up because I've only got one screen. Now, a node system would be more like the decentralized system in the middle here, whereas say each of the nodes that the regular users are connecting to would hold a large amount of that coin, and they would be responsible for ensuring the integrity of the chain that everybody is using. Yeah, I think that makes sense. But no, it's not like central banks of a coin. Central banks can just write and print money whenever they feel like it. Nodes can't. Nodes are rewarded for staking. They're rewarded. They earn a kind of an interest for staking, but they can't print it, and they can't really mess that much with the system. Any more questions? Let's him. Yeah, they kind of do act like doormen for the network, if you know what I mean. Nodes, like I say, they process transactions on the network, and they maintain the integrity of the chain through keeping and preserving a local copy of the blockchain, adding to it as new blocks are added, and instead of securing it through large amounts of computing power, they secure it by just holding large amounts of that coin. Because if I hold 1% of the Ethereum market, you want to be damn sure that I have a big interest in keeping the Ethereum blockchain working, because otherwise all of my investment is worth nothing. Hang on, I got asked a question. What question did I get asked? I'm not... I think I just did. Yeah, I think you asked what I just answered already. Okay, we're gonna. Oh yeah, man. I wish. I wish. It's just never really occurred to me. You know, never occurred to me. But it definitely seems like a big thing, man. Like there's so many new people getting into crypto these days, and there's nowhere to learn from it. I mean, everywhere you look to learn actual information, everyone's trying to sell you something, or trying to get you to buy in on whatever coin they've just bought, or something like that. But I like teaching people things. You know, it's I used to teach. I spent most of my college years tutoring people in science and biological science. I enjoy it. It's fun, and if I can help people understand a new technology that I have huge faith in, that's better for me in the long run, you know. But no, I enjoy it. I enjoy helping people to understand things. That's kind of my motivation here. But right, we'll get back to the last section of the lesson we've got today. I'm gonna tear through this pretty quickly, guys. It's mostly common sense. So, security. Big red underline here. Your private key is your entire wallet. If you lose your private key, if you show it online, if you share it anywhere, anyone that can see it can take everything in your wallet. They own your wallet. Back it up offline. if you can get hold of your private key through whatever wallet you're using, you'll have to look up how to do that. Write it down. You know, if you're going to use the same wallet for long-term holding, get a pen and a paper, write down the private key. You know, put it in your safe at home or wherever it is you keep your important documents, like your birth certificates and that sort of thing. Write it down, keep a hard copy in a safe place. Never share it publicly. If you want to look into hardware wallets, I'd recommend the Ledger Nano S. They're pretty cheap. It's like $70 or $80 each, and this is built to hold private keys securely and safely. If you invest in a serious amount of money, and if you want to let it sit, if you want to keep it in cold storage, I absolutely recommend the Ledger Nano S, and only buy direct from the manufacturers. For anything that you buy, anything that is going to store your public keys, get it directly from the manufacturers only. The reason for this is that if you buy it from a third party, you don't know what additional code they've put into this thing, and all it takes is a little line of code that says transmit public key to this email address, and you lost all your cash. I only buy directly from manufacturers. I can't stress that enough. This guy this guy learnt a lesson the hard way. What he's holding here is a paper wallet, and that QR code on that paper wallet is the private key of that wallet. He learnt a lesson very, very quickly. This was years ago on Russia Today, I think. They were doing a little section about Bitcoin, a little novelty section at the end of some news talk thing, and he was showing off, oh, this is my private key, this, that, and the other. I think they might have been giving them away to the audience or some competition or something. But someone at home watching this TV saw the guy flashing around his public and private keys, took a screenshot, scans the QR code, went to blockchain.info, input the private key, and stole the wallet live on TV. It was hilarious. I didn't see it live. I wish I did. But by the end of the episode, the guy who stole it sent a tweet to the studio explaining what he'd done, and that you guys need to, pay attention to what you're doing with your security here, because you're teaching people all sorts of stupid shit. And they let him keep the money, and they explained at the end of the episode exactly what they'd done wrong. And it's a perfect example about why you don't share your private keys with anyone, because just by looking at it, your wallet is owned. It's compromised forever. So don't share your private keys ever under any circumstances, unless you really trust the person that you're sending them to. So your PC at home, if you're using your PC for anything to do with cryptocurrencies or Mac or whatever it is, whatever you like, few tips. Always update. Like, honestly, every time you turn off or turn on your PC, check for updates. The vast majority of hacks these days are through zero-day exploits, which are things that you can do nothing about except update frequently. Use a separate email for all trading accounts. Very good advice. Do this now. If you haven't already, do it now. It basically adds, because most exchanges will send a confirmation email to your email address to confirm if you want to make a withdrawal or something like that. If your exchange account is attached to your personal email account, it means the hacker has, he has both in one. Once he owns one, he owns the other. In fact, I think the first point here should be never reuse passwords. Never reuse passwords, guys. Never. It's for anything that touches your Bitcoin, have a unique, strong password for. You can look up if you're on the internet how to make a strong password. I fully recommend you do it. When it comes to exchange accounts, I would recommend you set up a separate email with Proton Mail or Tutanota for anything that is going to touch your funds, because these are strong email providers with a strong focus on privacy, and you don't want your real life identity attached to your crypto identity. Because, like I say, if a hacker gets hold of one, he gets hold of all. It's all like creating security for online. It's all about adding as many layers as you can between you and a potential attacker. Keeping your emails separate is just one step that you can take. I'd strongly recommend using a VPN as well. If you do keep a lot of cash either in wallets on your computer or on exchanges, I would strongly consider getting a VPN. They're cheap, $5 a month or something like that. And what this does is it basically funnels all network traffic from your computer through a fake second computer before going on to wherever you're connecting to. This just adds another layer that an attacker has to get through to get to your data. I don't have any particular VPNs that I would recommend, and I would be receptive of any recommendations for good VPNs that people might have. I'm always looking for a good service that I can pay for in cryptocurrencies. If you guys know any, let me know. Back up everything valuable. Again, wallets. Every wallet you use, keep a backup of. Even if it's empty, keep a backup, because you can use it again later on. You never know. And finally, learn about encryption. I am not going to get into explaining the finer details of encryption with you as much as I'd like to, but even just watch a couple of YouTubes about how encryption works, just to get an idea of what the process is and what's going on. It will help you to understand. It'll help you to kind of analyze your own patterns and where how your behavior online might open you up to an attack. Never reuse passwords. I knew I put it on the top. Never ever reuse passwords. I can't say that enough. For any exchange, unique hard passwords. Always enable two-factor authentication. This will save you. Yeah, if your account gets hacked or if you get compromised and you've got 2FA on, you're fine. You know, a hacker needs to. It's another layer. You know, if you have unique email, if you have a separate email address and unique passwords, and if still a hacker manages to access your exchange account, he's gonna need to get the password for your email, or he's gonna have to get your mobile phone in his hand to withdraw funds. So always enable 2FA. It's a really good service. I'd even say if an exchange doesn't offer 2FA, don't use that exchange. Consider using a password manager. Again, don't have any I'd recommend. Happy for recommendations on that front. But basically, a password manager is a browser plugin that you log into, so you can use one password for every website, but it generates very difficult, very unique passwords for every separate website that you use. So the effect is you use the same password all the time, and it uses different passwords for everything you connect to, if you know what I mean. Yeah, don't make yourself a target and don't post your portfolio online. Not so technical, but very, very good security advice. Making yourself a target is, I see on Cryptocurrency Collectors Club all the time, people post up screen caps of their portfolios, and some are worth tens of thousands of dollars. Guys, don't do that. Don't be fucking stupid. Like, if you've got a lot of cash and you're keeping it somewhere, don't fucking don't tell everyone in the street. You know, if somebody knows you have a lot of money online, they're gonna look at you. You know, you're gonna become a target whether you want to or not. This works for real life as well. Like, I suppose the likes of Facebook and social media. Do you really want to advertise to everybody that you know that you hold a huge amount of cryptocurrencies? I'm not so sure I do. Like, I don't, like, I have a bit of activity regarding cryptos on my Facebook, but I don't like the people I know in real life don't really know me as a Bitcoin guy or really know me as a cryptocurrencies guy, because I kind of like the way I see things going is people that are in on this now are going to be very, very rich in a few years' time, or maybe 10, 15 years' time, and if people remember me constantly banging on about cryptocurrencies and bitcoins and the likes of it, and they're going to assume that I've done pretty well over those 5, 10, 15 years or whatever. And when people know you've done well for yourself, they treat you differently, and you treat people differently, and that's a sad part of life. But you know, think of the future, guys. Like, if things do go the way that we think they are, although I definitely expect them to, don't make yourself a target. You know, there's no need to brag. There's no need to sort of draw unnecessary attention to yourself in that respect. And finally, use strong passwords. Like there's like a strong password is easy to remember and hard to guess. So the longer the better, the more characters the better. The easiest passwords I always recommend is to have maybe 5, 6, or 7 words in a sentence that doesn't make sense. But well, it can make sense, but it doesn't really matter. But it's easy to remember 6 words in a row than it is to remember the order of all of the letters in that word, and it takes just the amount of computing power to hash it. So the longer it is, the better. The easier it is for you to remember, the better. And again, look at password managers. They're useful things. Multiple words, non-dictionary words actually is very good. Like most hackers who will try and guess your password will do so using a brute force dictionary attack, which is basically every hacker worth his salt has got a big long list of passwords that have been stolen from other places, and those passwords are used one by one in a brute force manner until the right one is found. If this doesn't work, the hacker will move on to an actual dictionary where you have a big long list of every single word in the dictionary, and it will try different combinations of those words. If you've got a few non-dictionary words in your password, in your 6, 7 words in your password, it's going to be a lot harder for a hacker to brute force that, because he will have to move from brute forcing words into individual letters, which ups the computation power massively. Again, it's just another layer between you and an attack. Non-alphanumerics, a few bits of punctuation at the beginning or the end of your password makes it a lot harder to guess. Longer is better, easy to remember. And again, don't be afraid of this. Don't be afraid of the pen and paper, guys. If you've got complicated passwords and you fear that you might forget them, write them down, keep them in your safe at home. You can't go wrong. There's no point risking these things. Yeah, a lot, like my memory ain't as good as what it used to be, so I don't rely on myself to be able to remember dozens and dozens of passwords all the time. So keep a record, guys. There's no harm in it. Cool. I think we're pretty much done now. That's kind of most of what I wanted to cover today, really. Does anyone, again, I'm going to stop for some questions. Does anyone have anything that they want to ask at this point? It doesn't have to be necessarily about what we've covered today. It's just if you have any general questions. Happy to try my best to answer them. And if I can't, I'll say I can't. Cool, man. Hopefully that silence means I've done my job pretty well. Cool, no worries, man. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I enjoy teaching people, and I wanna grow these seminars. To be honest, I'd like to be able to do these for a lot of people. I'm thinking of setting up a Patreon page, just so that people can sponsor me and that sort of thing. If you are happy with the content, do subscribe. I will be doing more of these. I hope to have like a new class a new lesson every 2 weeks, but it's quite a lot of work actually for me to organise this, more than I thought it was. Really appreciate your support, guys. I do welcome tips for these lessons. My suggested donation is whatever you would pay for a music lesson in your hometown. There's a Bitcoin and Ethereum address in the description of this video. Like I said, one of my students the other day sent me the webcam that I'm talking to you now. On. I really want to grow this channel, and I really want to grow this service and help as many people as I can. And obviously it takes cash to do that. There's a few expenses my end. I'd like to actually build a website in the next month or so. So if anybody does feel like drop in a tip for the help that they've had, don't be afraid. Ethereum and Bitcoin addresses are right there. And yeah, it's hugely appreciated, guys. And hopefully I can expand on this a little bit and help as many people get into crypto as possible, because it's my passion. I'm really into this technology, and I'm really into teaching people things, and I'd love to be able to do this as a job. Move your screen face to top left. So you want my picture to be on the top left instead of the bottom right? Is that what you're saying? It's all new to me, man. It's all new to me. I've never done this. Well, I've done a couple of these lessons before, but I'm learning every day. But anyway, well, I'm gonna leave it at that for tonight, guys. I really appreciate. Yeah, I really appreciate the support. One more thing, actually, I do for my own business side of things, I do a subscription-based newsletter. I'm sure that you've all noticed me. I'm very active on the Cryptocurrency Collectors Club Facebook group. I spend a lot of my time researching this. I probably spend maybe 20 hours in a week doing proper fundamental research on these new projects that I find and on news that comes up for existing projects. And I do share this research. If people are interested in subscribing to my subscriber newsletter, I basically do a rundown of all the research I've done during that week, and add a few recommendations at the end. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not qualified in any way to advise people about how to spend their money. I'll just share information that I've learned and make some recommendations based off my own analysis and how I feel that market might go. But yeah, if anybody's interested in the subscriber newsletter, last week I told people to get into Litecoin, Ant Shares, Sirecoin, Expanse, and something else. And to be honest, anyone who listened to me did really well out of it. Like, I think my recommendation last week was move the majority of your funds into Litecoin, while Bitcoin and Ethereum were at the time sort of battling it out with each other. This led to like a 30% rise or a 40% rise in Litecoin or something like that over that week. So yeah, anyone who took me up on that offer did well. If anyone is interested in getting on the subscription, just PM me or email me at cryptocollege@tutodota.com, and I'll sort that out for you. It's 0.02 bitcoins or $50 for a 3-month subscription. And yeah, if you want to support me that way, it's more than welcome. Again, thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate it. Some great questions. I appreciate any recommendations as well that you might give to people. If you know anyone who's is interested in learning more, do let us know. Like I said, I want to do regular podcasts like this, regular webinars like this, because it's fun, and if I can earn a bit of money for doing it, I'd be delighted to. But yeah, I'll let you guys go. Thank you very much. I'll see you again soon. It'll probably be a week or two until I'm finished with lesson 2, but I am going to rerun this lesson tomorrow a few times. Cool, man. Yeah. Alright, guys. Have a great day. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.